I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Susquehanna Township Board of Commissioners. This is our workshop meeting, and I will note that all commissioners are here. Two are virtual, and they are Commissioners Robarchuk and Engel. And we did meet in executive session, and we discussed matters of personnel and real estate. And I would like to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. And if I could ask Diane Krippus to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, I'd appreciate that.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Great job, Diane. I think that was the best ever. Or at least the best this month.
Can you come back March 9th?
Yeah, let's do it again. First up is petitions, complaints, suggestions from citizens. Do we have anybody that wishes to address them? Okay, seeing and hearing none. Move on to approval of minutes from our February 9th.
Mr. President, also move.
Second.
Moved in second. Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next up is recognitions, presentations. We'll go with the vacant property registration update. And I understand that Mr. Kevin Sidella is in the house.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Would you please explain what you do and give us an update on how you're doing it?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here again. My name is Kevin Sidella. I work with a company called Milberg's Law Firm. We run a program here. The company, the subsidiary of the law firm is called HERA. They manage your foreclosure registry program. We took over in November of last year. We got our number 7 to be exact. We got our first registration 3 days later. Right now, we currently have 67 properties that are under the obligation to register in what we would consider compliant. We're seeing about 25 registrations a month. Collected about $15,000 in fees so far since we took over. And we're seeing right now 11 properties that are what we would call non-compliant and ripe for enforcement. So we want to get with your staff, obviously, and see what the path forward is. But typically, this is the phase where we send out letters, 30 days, give them 30 days to comply. And then we coordinate with the local magistrates to kind of pull them in and get them to comply. But that's why we did this, so we could have that enforcement element, and we're ready to do it. But we're seeing 25 registrations per month on average, which is exactly where you were about 3 years ago. There's not much of a change as far as activity goes, but nationally and across the state of Pennsylvania, there is a slight uptick in foreclosure filings, 12% to be exact, is what we're seeing. Across PA, a little bit higher at a nationals level. This area is always a little bit inoculated from those climates, those conditions. It takes a couple months for it to get to Dalton County. I think a lot of that has to do with just more steady employment. The peaks and valleys of economic downturns do not hit this area as harshly or as quickly as they do other areas. But I do foresee by the end of this calendar year, you're probably going to see that 25 go to 30 or 35, if I had to guess. And I've been watching your foreclosure registrations for quite some time now, so a little bit of experience in it. But grateful for the opportunity. So glad that we did this. I'm glad to be here, and also just want to answer any questions that you might have about the program.
Kevin, can you repeat that figure? You said the number of properties non-compliant. What was that number again?
There's 11 right now
Okay.
that we're seeing that have an obligation to register and are unresponsive. So this is when we should send them the letter. And the law firm will do that, but we obviously want to work with your staff first before we do that.
And what was the number again that you said for 2024? Go from 25 to?
I would say you're going to see, I mean, it's no crystal ball here, but if the trends continue, I would say you're going to see 30 to 35 registrations a month based on what I'm seeing. But 25 is what you had 3 years ago a month. It's what you have now.
Are these all, does this include commercial properties and residential properties?
We can register commercials. These are not, though. Not right now. We don't have any. Commercials usually get taken care of. There's usually a property manager. There's usually somebody responsible to maintain it. We don't see a lot of foreclosure actions on commercial. It does happen, though.
I think with COVID, has there been an increase due to COVID?
An increase in foreclosure activity?
Yes.
Well, no, and there should have been. That's a really great question. The federal government kind of stepped in and said to the banks, don't do this to people under these conditions. So we didn't see an increase in activity. In fact, it just kind of stayed the same. The federal government did a really good job of making sure it didn't impact people. And then they released those moratoriums on foreclosure filings, and pretty much what we saw before COVID is what we're still seeing now. So it worked. Any other questions?
Dave or Betsy, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Nothing for me.
Nothing for me.
No, sir.
You're satisfied with Mr. Sedella?
With the firm, he's a good guy too.
Like,
I appreciate the service because, I don't know if other commissioners have experienced this problem, but when there's a property in the neighborhood that just starts to look bad, grass is growing and things like that, being able to track down quickly and resolve the issue with the property is important.
that is exactly why we implemented this, to keep up with those bad actors, because they do exist out there. There's a lot of banks that'll just let them sit there.
Right.
What our program does is force the banks to maintain them while they're in a state of foreclosure in particular. So, thank you.
All right. Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you all.
Like,
Okay. Next up is traffic study requests. Safety Director Mark.
Members of the board, I think you were forwarded the 2200 block of Bow Street study. It did not meet the requirements for speed humps, but what we will do is continue to monitor it for speed and show a presence out there. And I know that there's a recommendation or request for traffic calming speed humps for Montfort Drive and Windsor Farms. If you want us to complete that study, we can do that.
Okay, is there any comments or questions?
this,
Is there a motion? Go ahead.
no, I don't foresee that it's necessary, sir.
Okay.
To be honest with you, I mean, I walk that just about every other day, and it's rare that I see someone speeding through there. If it is, it's someone who lives back there, sir. So, and I hate to say that for someone in your ward, but I spend a lot of time there, and I hate to use our resources for something that's not occurring every day.
Sure.
I think it can be used at other places.
A potential, if there's, instead of a full-blown study, we can put our ATS machine there that gathers data over days of vehicles and gives us speeds, and we'll get a sense of traffic volume and speeds, and maybe just take a look at that, and I can push that back to you, and we'll see.
That would be great.
So it's not a full-blown study,
Yeah.
but it's, we'll use the technology we have to at least gather some data.
Yeah.
Okay?
Thank
Yeah,
you.
you did that on Elmore Avenue, which is a real raceway.
Yes.
And people are down there 72 miles an hour, and you clocked it.
Yeah.
But that sounds like a reasonable
Okay.
step. Do we need a motion on that?
Is that the system that shows the speed of
Correct.
the person driving?
Yes.
Do you think that tends to inhibit their behavior?
Did mine.
It might.
And he was walking.
If that inhibits, then at least the driver's paying attention at least.
Yes.
So that's a good thing.
Sure, no, it may help short term.
Yeah.
But whether it addresses any potential long-term problem, that's my only,
Yeah.
question.
We'll give it a try. All right, we'll give it a look.
All right.
Sounds good. That's all I have.
You too.
Any other questions? That's good.
Okay, next up is ordinances, resolutions, et cetera. First up is ordinance 23-01. And we're going to go into a public hearing, which Solicitor Miller will chair momentarily, and it's regarding the placement of language on attorney fees in ordinance.
This is the time and place set, Mr. President, for a public hearing on the adoption of an ordinance of the Township of Susquehanna, amending Chapter 1, Part 11, attorney's fees, adopting a reasonable schedule of attorney's fees, allowing the township to set forth the schedule of attorney's fees subject to a fee schedule adopted annually by the Board of Commissioners, so we don't have to amend this ordinance. First, I'd ask the administration to just provide any detail that I've left out in my short précis.
Thank you. I believe you covered everything. If the board adopts the ordinance this evening, we would work with council to present an amendment to the fee schedule resolution at a forthcoming meeting to reflect the current fees. And then again, we'll amend those annually, as Mr. Miller suggested.
Because this is a public hearing, is there anyone that would be heard on this issue? Going once, going twice, going three times.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Has this been properly advertised? Maybe you covered that.
It has been properly advertised. The advertisement has been placed in the paper. Yes.
And we don't need a court stenographer.
We don't need a court stenographer because we have no testimony to take.
Gotcha.
And the minutes should suffice. And as a general proposition, I'm in favor of attorney's fees. Let's just put that on the record. So I'm required by the bar to say that. If they don't, they throw me out. Other than that, Mr. President, as there is no testimony to be had by anyone, I would close the hearing and ask the board to adopt the ordinance.
The hearing is so closed. Is there a motion from members of the board?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded by Commissioner Pine. Any comments or questions? Basically, this will make it more easy to make adjustments.
This is going to make it much more efficient on us to be able to do this, yes.
Right.
That's correct.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Solicitor. Resolution 23R2, authorizing the installation of the ADA accessible parking space at 3653 North 3rd Street in Susquehanna Township. Chief, do you have anything on this?
Mr. President, it's a standard request. We conducted the study and we do recommend the placement of handicap parking space there.
Okay.
Mr. President,
Commissioner,
I move to approve the adoption of the handicap parking space.
Second.
moved and seconded by Commissioner Engel. Any comments or questions on the board? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
And opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And just a clarification on the ATS machine.
Yeah.
When we use that for traffic studies, we turn off the display. So we get sneaky.
Interesting.
But when we're just putting it out for traffic calming, then you see the display.
And you get a
So it is
recording
right.
of that, right?
Yes.
Good.
Yep. So just to clarify.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
with respect to item number 3 of tonight's agenda, may I suggest that we table this matter? Item number 3 is a resolution ratifying a collective bargaining agreement with AFSCME District Council 90 for a 3-year term. We've worked hard on this. The members of the bargaining team that are part of the Board of Commissioners and Mr. Probolka and township staff have spent a great deal of time trying to get to an agreement. We received a summary of those agreement terms today, and out of an abundance of caution, I'd like to review it with the manager and with our friends at AFSCME to make sure that we have everything just so before we pass it. And so I would recommend that we table this matter until the March 9th meeting where I anticipate we will be recommending the passage. And I do want to just throw out, and I apologize, just a thank you not only to the administration and to the bargaining team, but also to the AFSCME members of the authority, all of whom worked hard to get to this agreement. But again, the agreement is for 3 years, it's permanent. I want to make sure we review the language and make sure we're comfortable with it. So I would entertain a motion to table if the board would be so inclined.
Mr. President, also move tabling of this resolution to the March 9th meeting.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Isro, seconded by Commissioner Pine. Any comments or questions? I too would like to give a shout out to the staff, as well as the members of the board, but especially to Mr. Miller, for doing a yeoman's job in these negotiations. They're never easy, but they're productive, and we appreciate your service.
Thank you, Mr.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to table this to our January 9th meeting, or March 9th meeting. Any other comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next up is review of draft memorandum of understanding with Capillary Greenbelt Association. Mr. Canals?
Thank you, Commissioners. We've been working on developing this draft memorandum of understanding to help better define what we as the township are doing for ultimately the trail space that we own throughout the Greenbelt within the township. It also helps CAGA have a better understanding as well in terms of what support that we're going to be requesting from them at the same time. And it also helps us budgetarily and so forth as we go from year to year. Because when I arrived, I had no idea what we did, what we didn't do, because there's nothing out there. And as Diane will say, 30 some years, it's been a handshake and agreement and things happen. And it happened for all this time. But as times change, leadership changes, and administration changes, it's probably a good idea to have something in place that can be passed along as a legacy piece so people have some understanding moving forward and secure the Greenbelt for the future as well. So I've been working hand in hand with Diane and members of CAGA on this for, I'm not gonna say how long, it's been a little while. And we've worked through, I think, most of all of our issues and everything. We're not looking for any decisions tonight. CAGA still needs to review it on their end, on their board side. We have our solicitor as well needs to review it, theirs as well. But more just an informational piece. This is kind of where we're at and what we're working towards. I stand in here just in case any of the board members had any questions for CAGA as well.
Diane, is there anything you'd like to present or talk about?
I just want to say thank you. Let me start with a big thank you to all of you for being a 20-plus year supporter of the Capillary Greenbelt. I've been a 35-year resident of Susquehanna Township. I've known Commissioner Lynch for a long time. So it's a pleasure to be here tonight, and I have been an advocate for the Greenbelt for over 20 years. I'm now on the board of directors for the Capillary Greenbelt. And yes, as Doug has said, we have operated on trail magic, meaning that stuff just happens. So volunteers just make trees go away and volunteers cut the grass. And we are now on our third generation of volunteers that cut the grass through the state hospital property over 20 years. So the guys last about 8 years, and then they say, I've had enough of weed whacking, and my husband did that. I don't want to weed whack anymore. I don't want to ride a tractor anymore. But then we always get somebody new. We hope that that is the case, and that will continue to happen for years to come. But you all know how difficult it is to get volunteers for anything these days. So Pennsylvania built its trails on the backs of volunteers, and we hope the volunteers will still be there for years to come. But this draft MOU identifies what the township is responsible for. Because there's a lot of unusual easements, there's a lot of cobbling together. I don't think Doug realized the extent of what the township agreed to in 20 years ago, and so as elected officials change, this details what you are responsible for. It details who would do what. So is what CAGA is responsible for and what the townships are responsible for, and it lays out a path forward on capital improvements. So the trail through Susquehanna Township is over, I believe, over 20 years old, and it has held up really well, but it is being impacted by water. And water is the worst enemy of a trail, and the Asylum Run has some significant stormwater issues. And so we see challenges ahead from increasing stormwater throughout Susquehanna Township that I know that you're addressing on a township-wide effort. There's also, a few other problem areas that are going to require fixes, and this MOU lays out a process for us as two organizations to work together to try to fix those efforts. So right now, CAGA's top priority is restoration of the Pax Pang Parkway. We raised $2.5 million this past year. So we are able to raise funds, and so and we have received tremendous support from the foundations of the area. So as projects arise, whether it's adding a new connection somewhere or fixing the existing trail, we'll be by your side to help you raise the funds needed for those improvements. I don't think I have any. Again, I just want to thank all of you for your support. I think the fact that the township is doing a bike ped plan is awesome, and encourage the township to look at additional connections to the Greenbelt. I spent 20 years connecting the Greenbelt Veterans Park to Harris Hills, and Commissioner Lynch knows that. I was a young mother who couldn't push her stroller safely and in the closest neighborhood to the township park, and I couldn't safely push a stroller there. So it took a long time to get that easement, but that trail is used very heavily. It's now paved thanks to Triple Crown. And for Chief Martin, there are less ATVs now on that trail. So I think the paving of that section might be a good thing going forward, but we'll keep an eye on that for us. Any questions about any of the provisions?
Are there any other townships that utilize a MOU?
You asked a great question. So Susquehanna Township would be the first. Yes, the first. So the Greenbelt has operated for 30 years on handshakes with every single municipality.
Do you foresee it happening in other townships?
We want this to be a model for the others. And so this is the template that we've worked on, and Dave and Doug have been amazing through this process, and we've hashed through this and hope that we can tailor this to other municipalities going forward. So, Dauphin County owns the Fort Hunter extension. The city owns a significant portion of it, of the Greenbelt. So we need to have arrangements in writing with those municipal partners.
In Susquehanna Township, we'll have a team this year, correct?
Oh, June 4th. June 4th is for development. I believe you could register, I think you have your own code.
We have our own registration.
So we have a special code for all of you, and we encourage everyone and all of your township employees to join in the Tour de Belt, which is Sunday, June 4th.
Well, we should be thanking you. I mean, this is such a jewel, or I guess they say a necklace of jewels around the area. And like other commissioners, I've biked all 24 miles, whatever it is, including the Fort Hunter extension.
Right.
And it's just tremendous. It's a tremendous asset. And your volunteer work and the other volunteers of CAGA, have saved just a lot of resources, money and time and so forth. So we appreciate you. Thank you.
Well, we always need volunteers, so please, if you know anyone willing to volunteer for the Greenbelt, please send them our way.
Good.
We always need to fill the ranks. So.
Mr. President?
Yes, sir.
In my prior life, I wrote more than one MOU, and it seems to me that such an approach is perfectly fine in this setting, and as it happens, as one of the liaisons for the board with the RAC, I've already had an opportunity to review it in depth and think it was a very well-written document. I did mention, and I'll mention it just for the record, there was one thing that I saw in section 6, the indemnification language for staff and our solicitor to take a look at. I just thought it was the first paragraph. I had never seen indemnification written the way it is here, where it said both parties agree to indemnify and hold harmless the other party, etc. It's normally, one indemnifying the other because of the specific interest in the agreement, and maybe you can't have one that both parties can in certain circumstances, but the way it's there right now, I think it probably is ambiguous, and maybe we could come up with a little bit more concise language there. But I think it was a well-written document, and I'm, personally think that this is a good approach.
So there's typical MOUEs in this that we'll leave the smart solicitors to figure out how best to say this. But as Doug said, this has to be discussed with the CAGA Board of Directors. There's been a small group of us that have been working on it. And this also has to go through a legal review process on both sides. So we welcome your input to make it the best MOU that we can have and a model for the others.
The agreement obligates the township to do mowing on certain parts of the trail and so forth. Are we doing that now, or is this something that's being done by volunteers?
Yeah, there's majority of the mowing and the items that are listed already are things that we're doing.
We're doing already.
Okay. CAGA does do some mowing of some sections in the state hospital area. So the hope is that will continue. But as of right now, everything that we're mowing is in our current contract and previous contract as well with our mowing contract.
Okay.
Yeah, this details what is happening now.
Okay.
Doug met the volunteer Larry Wasser yesterday, who has been cutting the grass and trimming there, so he put a face, and they have connection to each other if there's anything that needs to be done there. But so we have a tractor over at the state hospital in maybe the old morgue, but it's in one of the old buildings over there. And so there's equipment over there, and guys get the equipment, then they mow from the state hospital to State Farm Road, and up one side and down the other, and then they trim. What is most challenging is the trimming of the 2 miles of fencing. That is a very long, tedious process.
Really.
But Larry's got a proposal to move some of the fencing, the fencing up, so that he can more easily get a mower underneath it. So that's, fencing was put up without thinking about long-term maintenance.
Did you ever fix that path along there?
The path?
Yeah, along is it the trail where the old middle school was?
Right.
Where you start from the graveyard and edge them out, and then you leave that area and you're coming towards if you're familiar with that old Harrisburg Middle School, there's a long path and it has railings all the way down.
Right, so it has heaving pavement. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, love it.
We're working on it.
Yeah, it's a bumpy ride there.
Yeah, it just wakes everyone up before the finish.
Yes.
There you go.
No, we've identified that as more of a capital than just a maintenance item.
Yeah.
So we gotta look at it a little closer, because we gotta identify the trees and everything like that. One, do we want to just cut the trees down, or do we want to try and preserve it, and how we may go about it? So that's on our capital list, because that might be more than.
Yeah, it's a great path, it's just a little bumpy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did look at it with your public works director, and
Yeah, we were out in the fall.
yeah, that was the first time I ever recall doing that. I've worked with many managers and park and rec directors, but we actually walked, the public works director and Doug and I walked through the township section, and this is maintenance, this is capital. Came up with a list, submitted it to Dave. So that, I think in all my years of working with the township, that was a first. So and I do want to commend this Board of Commissioners and the township manager and Doug for, I believe the stars have aligned for this to happen now. So,
Yeah.
and
Well,
look
it's
forward
just-
to signing, to putting a little bow on it.
once we get to that point, the other municipalities are the city of Harrisburg, Swatara Township, Paxtang, and Pembroke,
So.
plus Dauphin County?
Swatara Township doesn't own any of the Greenbelt, though there is a section in Swatara Township.
Right.
Pembroke Borough does not own any of the Greenbelt, but it's right next to it, and there's a switchback that comes down from their park. Paxtang, Harrisburg City, Susquehanna Township, and Dauphin County, and HAC are owners. There's an easement agreement between HAC and the city of Harrisburg for the section through HAC. Yeah. So technically, the city is responsible, but the HAC does us a great favor by cutting the grass, because they have to get actually to their own buildings that are there. So while you're taking the tractor over there, can you just cut the grass on the way to the indoor, the indoor shooting center? I forget what is it, the McColl, is that? Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Oh, public safety?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when that facility was built, HAC agreed to cut the grass. And they've been very helpful on that.
Yeah, good. Any other questions or comments? Yeah, we talked to Dave the other day, and, just try to figure out ballpark any cost drivers or changes in our current practice versus what, we'll memorialize. I think that would be helpful for the board. If there is any, even if there is a driver, it's not to say it's not worth doing, but just to know, be aware of what it is. It'd be helpful. Thank you. Great Pledge of Allegiance. Awesome.
I'll come back just for that.
The new Kate Smith.
She's a big bash.
All right. Next, we're going to have a conversation on car charging. Mr.
Yes.
Polk.
Thank you, Mr. President. So there's a memo in your agenda that kind of summarizes a recent meeting that some staff and Commissioner Failona and I had with a representative from ChargePoint. ChargePoint is a manufacturer of electric vehicle charging stations, levels 1, 2, and 3. Level 1 being a kind of a slow charge, level 3 being a direct current fast charge system. What we sort of presented or reviewed a little bit was a proposal for a level 2 electric vehicle charging station. There's some specifications for that particular unit that are provided with your agenda. The reason that we had this meeting was because, as part of some of my ward views with some of the commissioners, some of my subsequent discussions with some of you, it was indicated that there was an interest in exploring the option to install an electric vehicle charging station at the township facility. So in looking at this a little bit more carefully, having a chance to talk with the Public Safety Department, with Chief Dries, with Director Martin, we've identified a few concerns that if the board is interested in pursuing this a little bit further, we really ought to do a little more due diligence on our end in order to be able to identify the feasibility of one of these installs and to attempt to resolve some of the greater public safety concerns. Some of you may know that there's emerging hazards with some of these vehicles. The lithium-ion batteries that are put into some vehicles have caught fire and are very difficult to extinguish, in some case reignite after they're initially put out. So we really want to be cautious about that as we situate one of these installations. Want to avoid public utility conflicts overhead. We certainly want to avoid proximity to buildings and other vehicles. And maybe some other things as well. In addition to the safety hazards that are presented by some of these vehicles, we also have site concerns that warrant further explanation or exploration. There are some unique electrical features about this building. We share a transformer with the Holtzman Elementary School, for example, also partly service the public safety building. And we are basically maxed out or close to maxed out on our electrical load. So there may be some upgrades that need to take place in order to even accommodate one of these charging stations. So the reason that I put this on your radar tonight is, as I mentioned before, I heard from some commissioners and we had a meeting. I don't know if Commissioner Fayalona had anything that he wanted to add, or if the board wanted to have any questions answered or comments. I'm not asking for any direction this evening unless you want to move forward. If you did want to move forward, I think the prudent next step would be to conduct a more thorough site assessment and electrical capacity analysis, and again, work with the Public Safety Department to identify maybe an optimal location for this that will mitigate some of the hazards.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. So I'd like to add some more meat to what you presented here. So basically, we do have a climate action plan that we really want to pursue as a township, right? And also, there are some rebates and grants available for these things out there that unfortunately is time limited. The availability of is limited. And lastly, if there is a good, there's a good reason for shifting to an EV, even for township use, if we can do that. And there are also rebates and refunds available for that as well. So I think doing this due diligence as to where we can put it in the campus or even off campus, in conjunction with a possibility of shifting from an ICE or gas-powered vehicle to an EV, could be a good combination of starting on our or working on our climate action plan.
Quick question, in terms of the, I guess I have questions about the costs, but also referencing the rebates that are available. Our agenda seems to reference $2,500 to $3,500 of assistance, but then the document that we were presented talks about $3,500 per plug. And we're talking about potential for 2 plugs?
2 plugs, that's
Right.
correct.
So, am I reading that wrong? Would that be a $7,000 potential for?
It would be dependent on, that's my understanding too, depending on whether you open both plugs or ports up to public use. That's how that kind of range of qualification is applied.
Okay.
We don't have any electric vehicles currently, correct?
No electric vehicles in the municipal fleet, that's correct.
Now, do we have any, like with advanced planning, do we have any targets of when we want to start adding? Because I'm trying to figure out whether, because I think having one of these makes sense at some point, but whether it's now or do we wait? I mean, do we foresee like in the next 2-3 years starting to have electric vehicles or longer? I mean, has there been any thought within the township on that issue?
Sure. There hasn't, to my knowledge, been any meaningful discussion given to acquiring any electric vehicles to date. Right now, we have a contract with Enterprise where a majority of our fleet vehicles come from, not our police vehicles. Those are purchased outright. There really aren't any police vehicles that are electric vehicle pursuit rated that are EVs that really address some of these concerns that are out there. So I think, and Director Martin can correct me if I'm wrong, we're probably a ways out before any electric vehicles in the police fleet.
Quite a ways.
And of course, you can probably imagine that we're a ways out from any of the public works road vehicle, the heavy equipment vehicles that we need, the single axles and tandems, before those are compatible. So really, the only likely candidate for those would be kind of our fleet cars that we use for field views, stormwater coordinator, code enforcement, things like that. But we don't have any plans to purchase them in place right now.
And if we did, because that's one issue I was thinking of, but the other is if, trying to remember now if I saw something in there in terms of public use, like collecting user fees to help, because I would assume there would be some kind of charge, no pun intended, for some, for the public to use it. Actually, maybe the pun was intended.
Right, so they're very versatile. That's one nice thing about these charge point units is that you can charge, you can, for the charge, you can not charge, you can give it free of charge. You can place a premium after a certain number of hours that a vehicle charges to discourage somebody just parking their vehicle for a whole day and tying up a township parking space. And you can also limit the number of hours that a public use can charge their vehicles. So, it's pretty adaptable in that regard. It would just depend on how the board wants to approach it. Commissioner Pine asked about the cost of one of these units. Depending on how we procure it on their municipal procurement, their joint procurement contract, they range from about $7,000 to $8,000 for this level 2 CT 4000 charging station. Commissioner Phelan, is that how you remember it too? It's like 7,500 approximately. So a majority of it of the acquisition could be offset by this rebate. And that doesn't include any engineering, any site work that would have to be done, restoration, electrical, conduit, et cetera, and potentially upgrading the service to the municipal building as well.
As you know, Commissioner Felona mentioned, I think the one issue in terms of timing is the fact that these rebates are limited. It's a first come, first served situation with the state Department of Environmental Resources. It's something to consider in our whole issue of timing. We want to try to take advantage of the money while it's there.
So you did mention that our fleet for township use is through enterprise, right? Have you looked into shifting, instead of paying the rental, because there's obviously an economics in fuel savings vis-a-vis the tax rebate for EV as well. Because I think the best scenario would be take advantage of all the rebates so the township gets started on this thing.
Couldn't you use hybrid vehicles?
The plug-in hybrid, yeah.
Wouldn't that be a lot cheaper for the taxpayer as opposed to spending $7,000 or $8,000 for this? And why would the township want to take on that? Wouldn't this be better, like at a Giant up the street at their gas station? I mean, kind of like you see Sheetz has some, or Service Plazas at them. But as a township, why would we want to invest in that? And we have no vehicles in our fleet that uses it. The location, the engineering behind it. Is there any other municipalities that use this?
I don't know the answer to that question, but I can tell you, if we've got $7,000 worth of rebate, then that's an incentive, obviously.
Yeah, but what about your engineering is going to cost more than $7,000? Just the study. I'm not talking about, the construction of it, the location of it, what it's going to do to the electrical. We're maxed out now, so you got to add that cost on. And then we're tied in with the school, the fire department.
Well, clearly we have significant questions to answer.
Yeah.
Obviously.
And I'm just trying to throw it all out there, and not to be the negative on the board, but.
Oh, yes, you are.
Would I do that? No.
What
about potential liability on this?
Yeah.
Now, I think the idea there is really, this will actually only make sense if we do have plans of shifting one or two of our vehicles, because there is really, and there are so many studies out there on fuel savings if you switch. And if you have the charging station, obviously because you need that, then this will make sense if you have the charging station in the township building and you have an EV. So if you have that ability to shift one or two of our vehicles to it, then it makes sense.
Which we have with the hybrids, with Enterprise.
Only the plug-in hybrids can take advantage, but anyway.
Don't we have plug-in hybrids? I mean, this should not be the dog being wagged by the tail. In other words, you don't chase rebates so you can build something that's going to cost 3 times as much if there's no apparent need for it. But on the other hand, it's too, intriguing an idea just to let go.
Right.
Without, exploring, all the things that we would. And I would suggest that Mr. Napper be part of this discussion because he's done this for his living. you know, along the turnpike.
There you go, volunteering me.
There, yeah. Better you than Rocky. It's either you or Rocky, you two.
I never volunteer for anything, sir.
And also, I think what I'd like to add really is that obviously as an EV owner, the fuel
Oh, so
savings.
that's where this is coming from. Huh?
Well,
Was
I'm
that
on
a
the
recommendation of the Climate Action Committee of Susquehanna
Yes,
Township?
I read that piece.
Oh, really?
And, yeah, and, you know, there are people who come to commissioners' meetings who might have a hybrid car. Yeah.
Well, tell them to go down to Giant and we'll
plug in.
build them up. We'll to hook up. I think that would be a
A
ideal
municipality
spot.
can set the example, set a
Right.
good example, you know,
Yeah, we can set it right up there.
the commercial entities could,
Don't you think that would be, I mean, seriously, that would be an excellent location. You
well, no,
already
they,
have,
I believe they have one.
do they? Okay.
I know the Giant, you know, closest to me, which happens to be in Lower Paxton Township, has one.
Yeah, I've seen that
I
one.
use that.
Okay.
And I would be surprised if the one here doesn't.
No, but I think for the township, the case really is that, okay, so we want to implement our climate action plan, right? And one of the best ways to do that really is to replace our ICE vehicles with an EV, right? Because there are tremendous fuel savings there. So you have to have the infrastructure for it. You can charge and you have the EV. And there's also a tax rebate on the EV side too. So you have the cost savings on the fuel, which is more on the total cost of ownership. But at the same time, in the acquisition cost, you can get refund as well.
Location, location, location.
Yeah, so-
Just made an argument. I mean, it's a chicken or the egg situation. You know, do you get more charging stations to encourage more EV vehicles, or do you wait until there's more EV vehicles out there and supply charging stations? Yeah. Either case is logical argument.
I've done quite a few of them at service plazas along the turnpike.
Right.
And we don't put them at tow booths, we put them at service plazas. And there's a reason why you put them there. That's where people go for fueling, that's where they go, you know? You don't put them at your main buildings. Because you want traffic though, you want to generate money from it. You're not going to generate money by putting it on this property.
I mean, frankly, I don't see especially out front, but even in the back, I mean, there's not a lot of space to really do that. And like you say, with the wiring and whatnot, with electrical poles and stuff, I just don't really see one being in our township building. After we do the study, I'd be surprised they'd say, oh, we could put one here. I'd be shocked.
Shocked.
Then you always have the question of the school right next door,
Right.
200 feet away.
Well, power line.
Because they'll have to cut off their electricity for a period of time.
But we live in a strange time.
We're not California.
We'll test their battery backups.
Yeah. Well, let's keep the conversation going.
Yeah, how's the generator work here?
You asking me?
Oh, no, the board. I mean, the guys who've done this study, you know, on this,
The generator that we use in,
yes.
yeah, I do not know the answer.
So that'd be another question, because you're gonna have to shut down power in order to install it.
We don't have
Oh.
We don't have one right now. It's coming pretty soon, I think, if I remember. What,
July.
It's in the mail.
July. Okay. May, July.
I can't believe you
Somewhere
have to
in
turn out power to the whole building. I would think that you could turn out power to.
Yeah, we just don't know. I think, to the commissioner's point, we have sort of dipped our toes, met with a representative from the company that manufactures these, had some conversations with public safety, and really this was just a first touch point to get your sense of whether you want to continue and pass go, or whether you want to just say, let's put it on ice for a little while. What I'm hearing is, as President Lynch just pointed out, maybe we'll keep the conversation going. We'll see if we can do a little preliminary site analysis and have some discussions with, maybe somebody from Alex's team about what we might be looking at in terms of electrical, without getting too far into, the analysis. And if we have anything to report back, we'll continue to do that. And I heard Commissioner Napper volunteered to be a part of that discussion, so.
Man, Alex, that's off the table.
You got that in the minutes, right? Kathy, you got that in the minutes, right? Okay.
Who's your buddy?
Too late.
You're on the hook.
No, you think I'm going to authorize
No.
HRG? No way.
Thank you.
Anything else on that, Mr. Tremora?
No, sir, nothing from me.
All right. Consent agenda. We have two security reduction requests for Margaret's Grove. What's that?
No.
Okay. Phase 3A for $249,547, and Phase 2B, $57,785. Did you discuss that, Alex?
I'm sorry.
Would you discuss that, or?
I have nothing to discuss unless the commissioners have any questions or concerns. I'm not concerned in trying to answer anything that you might have.
No, I went up and took a look today at that development, and it seemed to coincide with what your findings were, so I'll make a motion that we approve.
It's been moved.
I'll second.
Ooh, okay, well, first there. Okay, Commissioner Carl. Moved and seconded. Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Says Commissioner comments section. See you in an hour. Does anybody have any comments they'd like to offer?
Yeah, I do. Regarding the Greenbelt pedestrian and bicycle study that's being done, I know that in my ward, I have a number of instances where we have sidewalks that end and people have to go out in the street for a period of time, sometimes in very, what I think are probably pretty dangerous situations. And I just want to put forward that I'd like to see the committee or the results of that discussion include filling some of those gaps, particularly where there's pedestrians walking on a busy street because there's a section of sidewalk that is not there. I think that's pedestrian-wise, that's probably the biggest need, at least in my ward. I think Jody would probably agree with me on that. I know that there's a lot of gaps in the first ward as well. And I think we ought to start addressing that. We're trying to do what we can do on the planning commission side and the commissioners here in requiring sidewalks sometimes where people think they make no sense. But you got to kind of start someplace if you're going to try to fill in these gaps. And you know, I can point out some that in my ward, I'm sure most of the commissioners could as well, where, you know, people are maybe living dangerously going on the street where they shouldn't really have to. So that's.
Do some of those areas involve infill opportunities where construction can be done that could be required as part of the plan approval?
The ones I'm thinking of are pretty well built up,
Okay.
but they were built without sidewalks for some reason, or there's one right here on Crooked Hill Road. If you come out of the development, the sidewalk ends at the commercial building, the office building, and then the sidewalks along Lincolnstown Road. But if you're not going to walk through the grass or across the parking lot, you got to go in the street just to get to the corner.
Gotcha.
And that would not be a huge expense, I don't think, to the property owner to put in, you know, 100 feet of sidewalk. But, you know, I just think we need to begin to address that. We're trying to address it on the end of requiring subdivisions to put in a sidewalk and that kind of thing. But I would like to see, you know, thoughts about how to approach fixing some of those problems.
I can only second Commissioner Rothrock's comments because, I mean, we spent $800,000 in mostly state money to build a sidewalk along Union Deposit Road. And, you know, that was because previous commissioners presumably had allowed waivers for the sidewalks along the commercial area and some.
Like him?
Yeah. So, you know, we have, as a policy, this board, for the last 10 years at least, maybe more, have moved away from the waivers, you know, and I appreciate that. I'm grateful for that. because the cost otherwise is significant to the township, to the state, whoever's providing the funding.
Anybody else?
Mr. President?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I would just like to add on to what Commissioner Rothrock said. Yes, in the first ward, we do have issues with that as well. And perhaps the most concerning area are the corner properties that do not have sidewalk, because that's typically where they place bus stops. So you have young children standing there, and if there's not a sidewalk, there's no requirement for the property owner, of course, to shovel grass. So when you have snow on the corner, the kids are forced to stand in the street. So if there were a sidewalk there, property owners would shovel, and so that's just another one of the issues. So yeah, it is an important issue.
Agreed. Anybody else? Commissioner Napper, you seem to be on fire tonight.
No, it's a workshop, sir. This is
There you
where
go.
this is to occur.
Anybody else have anything before we go?
Well, I guess we need to find more money, Mr. Commissioner Pine, so we can fund other sidewalks in other areas. State money.
It's not in front of my house. Or your house.
That sidewalk gets used a lot on Union Deposit Road.
You're right.
Yeah, it does. So does it in front of the high school.
And those people used to walk on the street,
Yeah.
very busy Union Deposit.
Now, if we can just get rid of that left turn coming down Union Deposit
On the
Road.
Shield Street. The commissioner's out of order. It's my favorite left turn. All right, if there are no more comments, the chair will entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn, sir.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Fred, you got beat. Both. Motion by Commissioner Napper, seconded by Commissioner Engel. Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are out of here. Thank you.